we know that the Nesiim, the princes of the Jewish people, offered sacrifices for 12 days to inaugurate the Mizbeach. We talked about it yesterday. Now, what happened on Shabbat? We know that on Shabbat, you're supposed to bring the communal offerings because, the Olah, the Musaf, all our prayers are based on those sacrifices. But on Shabbat, you don't bring the korbanot, yachid, the personal sacrifices, because they don't have to happen on Shabbat. If somebody has to bring a peace offering to God or a sin offering, then wait till Sunday, do it on Friday. Now, regarding the sacrifices of the Nesiim, the princes of the Jewish people, were they considered a private offering because they, as the Torah says, they used their own funds, or they were considered a communal offering because they were representing the community? So there is a nice midrash that says there is three things that the princes, the leaders of the tribes, did that were not proper. Nevertheless, God accepted them. One of them is to bring their sacrifice for the inauguration of the temple on Shabbat. Nevertheless, God accepted, and we learn from here, says the Midrash, how precious were these sacrifices to Hashem. Now, there is another Midrash later in the parasha that says, do not think how could they broke the Shabbat by bringing the sacrifices. No. God said, Ani amarti leMoshe, I told Moshe that they should do this. In other words, they didn't do anything wrong. They were bringing, but God commanded them to do. So seems to be a contradiction. One midrash says they did wrong, but nevertheless God accepted them. But the second midrash says, no, I told you to do this, so there is no sin to begin with. So we have to understand in general how this idea of Shabbat being pushed off in order to do a sacrifice works. There is the story in the Talmud that tells us that the first Yom Kippur that the Jewish people had, the great temple of Jerusalem, they didn't do it. He says, why? They thought, if the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the desert, that was a temporary place, when they inaugurated it pushed Shabbat, and we say, no, it's now Shabbat, we're in the inauguration of the temple, that they offer these private sacrifices. When we're doing a Bet HaMikdash, a Kedushat Olam, forever will be holy, this area, this space, until today. So, for sure, it pushes off Yom Kippur. Obviously, it was a mistake, but it's interesting, this concept that forever will be holy. I was looking at the news about some lady that was breastfeeding in Temple Mount yesterday. Is it an issue? Are you allowed or not? And even though we're in deep diaspora, that we gave the Waqf, the Arabs, control of the holiest site of Jerusalem, but still it's on the news. The Kedusha is there because it's not too many places that people are wondering how to behave and how to treat. Well, by the way, if you want to look at it, it's in Israel National News today. So the two opinions on the Midrash could be found in the Talmud. So one opinion says that each tribe is considered a kahal, a community, and therefore community sacrifices trump Shabbat. They're more important, and you're supposed to be bringing them. But seems to be that the other Midrash says that a Shevet, a tribe, holds is not a community and is bringing its own personal sacrifice, and in theory should not push off the Shabbat. So, but the Rebbe says this, by the way, we're learning a Sikha from the Rebbe. It's a little deeper stuff than we usually learn. It's based on a talk that he gave on the 7th of Nisan of 1981. So he says, no, you can't even think that, because it's clear that a Shevet, a tribe, is considered a community. It's we learned yesterday about how each one represented all of the others as well. So the question is, since this was not funds from the community, from, as we explained earlier, they were private funds from each prince, perhaps you can say that this is not a proper offering from the community. So the Rebbe is going to connect this with a few generations back about, oh, I forgot to mention something important. Who is the prince who which tribe offered on Shabbat? Was Ephraim, which is the son of Yosef. So Yosef kept Shabbat before it was given. Even in Egypt, he had Nebuah, he kept Shabbat. So God told him, I'm going to give you a reward because you did something that wasn't commanded. You reached into a very high level, very high place. I'm going to give you a reward that your children will do something very special. What is the reward? That they brought the sacrifice on Shabbat. So seems to be a contradiction here. Because Yosef was so careful in Shabbat, you say that his grandchildren will be bringing a sacrifice in Shabbat. That seems to be going against Shabbat. So the Rebbe explains that bringing a sacrifice in Shabbat when it's a mitzvah, you're not breaking the Shabbat. That's the keeping of the Shabbat. Like the Talmud says a very strange language. When someone's life is in danger on Shabbat and you're driving to the hospital, you're giving treatment, you're not breaking the Shabbat. You are keeping the Shabbat. The Talmud says, do this now in order that in the future you should be able to keep the Shabbat. This person should be able to keep many times Shabbat. So we find that if a person is too religious and says, no, I'm not driving on Shabbat to the hospital, he's breaking the Shabbat. He's doing the opposite. So the same case here, when the person says, I'm bringing a sacrifice in Shabbat, it's not that he's breaking the Shabbat. It's reaching to a place so high where his connection with Hashem is such that he's supposed to do this on Shabbat. And this is the reward why Yosef was reaching so high with God in a place that even before he was commanded to keep Shabbat, he did. The same is with Menashe, the prince of Menashe here, Ephraim, his grandchild that is offering a sacrifice because he's connected with God in such a deep way that the sacrifice is higher than Shabbat. And not only that, this is the way of keeping a Shabbat. Imagine a Kohen will say, oh, it's Shabbat, I don't want to bring the Musaf of Shabbat, the sacrifice of Shabbat. It's not that it's keeping Shabbat, it's going against the service of God on Shabbat. So the same is here, that they were connecting with God in such a high level that God says, okay, this is, you're keeping the Shabbat, and it's connected, the Rebbe explains, even with the name of the tribe of Yosef, we know his name is Yosef Hashem Li Ben Acher, that What does it mean? Simply means that God add, increase, give me another son. But the Hasidic explanation is no. From the acher, from the other, from the one that is far away, this distance from Judaism, from Torah, from our, make him a ben. Transform that person that is far, bring him closer. And it's more appropriate even for Ephraim. Why? Because it's written, Ki ifrani Elohim be'eretz ani'i. Because God made me grow, multiply in the land of my affliction. So in a place that is dark, you transform darkness into light, and God makes you grow. And this is the ability, the blessing of Yosef, to reach into places that seem that there is nothing to do about it. Oh, Shabbat, you can't do a korban. No, you connect in such a higher way. You look at another person. It's an acher. Right now, looks like a stranger. Yosef Hashem liben acher may. Hashem add to me, transform the acher, the foreigner, the one that's away, make him a ben, make him like my son. Why? Because I don't look at the superficiality. I don't, what of the big concerns today in the US, all these riots, all these horrible things happening is because people are talking about racism. When you look at another human, you don't look at the superficiality, you don't look at the way they're dressed, you don't look at their skin color, you don't look at the shell, but you look at their soul. And when you look at their soul, it's easy to transform someone from a acher, from a foreigner, into a ben, into a child. And this is the power that Yosef had and gave his children, Ki ifrani Elokim beretzoni, to be able to grow, to transform from a place of ani, of affliction, of darkness, to grow, to multiply, when you're not influenced by the superficial, by the surroundings, by the physical, but you look at the soul. And what does Hashem want me to do with this? How should I react? What is the lesson? Maybe always look at the soul of the matter, the core, and find the inspiration, the neshama, the life from Hashem, and it will, Yosef, Hashem will increase the physical, the spiritual, bring unity, bring love and peace in the world when we need it so much. Thank you for watching. Tonight we'll have a special JLI class at 8 o'clock. If you need the materials, if you want the materials, please send a private message. Have a blast.